Hi, welcome to this overview for Python that can be used for data analytics. The prerequisites for this applied data science with Python courses that you need prior programming experience in Python. We are not going to be dealing with the basics of the Python language or the IDEs to be used or anything like that. We expect you to already have this experience. You should already have a Python IDE. The one that will be used as a part of this course to show the examples will be the Anaconda framework and the Spider IDE, but you are free to use whichever ones you want as long as you are familiar with how you can go around doing things in this IDE. And you should be capable of installing additional packages yourself as and when required. So I hope that should be easy for you given your prior programming experience. And our focus in here is only to look at the Pandas library and the scikit-learn libraries that are used for data analysis and machine learning. And it is recommended that, we are not going to fully explore, every possible function that is there in Pandas or scikit-learn. Rather, we are going to be taking the major ones and then explaining to you how you can use them. But we recommend that you go about exploring all these other functionalities individually. There is some excellent documentation available for both Pandas and scikit-learn in their respective websites. Let's move on to Pandas. So what is Pandas? So Pandas is an open source library for data analysis in Python. The focus of Pandas is on large amount of data, similar to how you would do like querying on SQL, how you work with a database, how you work with a table in a database or with an Excel spreadsheet. It pretty much gives you similar or same kind of functionality that you can do within Python. And it is also a high performance library. Given the amount of data that it is handling, it is really high performing. It has been made with a specific intention of producing fast results, fast data analysis. It is useful in various stages of the data science lifecycle, from data acquisition. It can be used for cleansing, imputing missing data, transforming data by mergers and joins and stuff like that. It has a table-like representation. That is a good thing about Pandas, is that it gives you like a table-like representation with named columns. So that it is more like associative arrays or tables with actual column names rather than just indexes like 1, 2, 3, 4, which makes it difficult to handle and program for. It gives you SQL-like operations, like it gives you like group by, indexing, joins, merge. And it has support for matplotlib, so you can do some graphics also with Pandas. The data structures in Pandas can easily be converted to and from other Python data structures like lists and dictionaries. So Pandas has very seamless integration with all the other data structures too. So things using Pandas is relatively very easy given the way it has been built and integrated with the rest of the Python ecosystem. It also has support for various statistical functions like mean, standard deviation, kurtosis and stuff like that. And you can find documentation on Pandas in this pretty website. So you can go through the various Pandas example in the other presentation that will take you through how you create these various structures and use them for various purposes. But do go to this website to figure out all the other functionality that is available that you can use as a part of your work. So let's start with what does Pandas give you. So Pandas gives you something called a data structure called a series. A series is a one-dimensional array. It is like a list, it is a one-dimensional array, but there are certain additional things that Pandas does for you than what you would get from a typical list. And those things are that, first of all, you can convert to and from other object types like dictionaries. You can convert a dictionary to a series to a dictionary. It can provide you named array indexes, so you can access members of the series. The series is like a list of things. You can access members of the series using logical names. You can use strings to index them, not just 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is the first advantage of series. It provides you group by functions, so you can do some group by and then compute certain things out of it. It provides support for statistical functions like mean, standard deviation. So you can, for a given series, you can compute mean and standard deviation just like that by just calling the function. And it also supports indexes for fast operations. You can search through a series through the index, in a very fast manner. So large series objects can easily be searched quickly by the use of indexes. And then, so series is a very good data structure to use whenever you are storing one-dimensional arrays, especially for data handling purposes. The next data structure that is available in Pandas is the data frame. So data frame is a two-dimensional array and it represents a table. So we have been used with tables when you're dealing with databases. Table as rows and table as columns. Similarly, we are used to seeing tables in Excel, again rows and columns. Rows typically have row IDs and column typically have column names, and that is the same case with respect to a data frame. Every row in a data frame has a row ID and every column has a column name. So you can always access a specific row and a specific column using these labels. Each column in a data frame by itself becomes a series. That's one of the advantages. So when you get a single column out of a data frame, it becomes a series, and that series can then be used. You can use various other series functions on the series for doing your various data manipulation tasks. A data frame provides quick and easy way to load, read data, as well as write data too. You can read data from CSVs, from databases, from HTML tables, from JSON objects, from HTML text. So anything that represents a table, pretty much there is the converter that is available that can take data from these table-like structures and load them into a data frame. The same applies for writing data also. You can write back to any of these structures also with just one function call. So that is a very easy way of getting data into a data frame and getting data out of a data frame. So that is one of the strengths of the data frame. It provides again support for statistical functions that can be applied by row, or you can even apply them column by column. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you can use these statistical functions. There are transformation operations like group by, join, merge. So these are kind of operations which you would have been already used to when you have been looking at SQL. So here also you will find similar operations available for you. So that is again a great thing with Pandas. It has support for plotting. So you can just take a data frame and pass it to matplotlib for plotting on individual columns or individual rows. So there is an excellent plotting support available within a data frame, and that is one of the biggest advantages of data frames. Moving on to scikit-learn. Scikit-learn is a library that is used for data mining and analysis. See, Pandas, the focus is on providing a data structure, giving you a series and a data frame through which you can manipulate data. Python gives you a number of algorithms, actions that you can do on the data. That is what comes out of scikit-learn. Scikit-learn gives you the algorithms and actions that you can do on data. It is built based on NumPy, SciPy, and Matplotlib libraries. So some of the internal data structures it uses, the scikit-learn library uses, is from NumPy, SciPy, and Matplotlib. It has support for various machine learning algorithms, clustering, classification, regression, etc. The biggest thing that you will see in scikit-learn is that all the algorithms are implemented using kind of a common interface. So it doesn't matter what algorithm you're using, you will see the code will always look very similar. The code that you're going to be writing looks very similar. That makes it very easy for you to build code that is common, that can use multiple different algorithms to do your prediction. So you will see in the examples that the code starts looking very similar from one algorithm to another, and that is one of the greatest strengths of scikit-learn, is that they built a nice wrapper around these individual algorithms so that all of them the interfaces look pretty the same between all these algorithms. So that is excellent because your own learning the number of things you have to learn for using various algorithms becomes very minimal. It has pre-processing support, which is data engineering activities like you can do dimensionality reduction, you can do model selection, you can do pre-processing. We are not going to cover the Scikit-learn has a lot of advanced topics within it, and we are not going to be covering all these advanced topics. So we are going to be just focusing on using them to build an end-to-end data science solution. And you can take any of these advanced methods and insert them as a part of your project too. So I do recommend that you explore this Scikit-learn website, look at what other features are available in Scikit-learn, and do try out the various algorithms, additional algorithms on your projects themselves. So that should be of very great help to you. So let us touch upon graphics for to some level. Graphics, you see that a picture is worth 1,000 words, that you have heard again and again. In a data science project, the visualization of your analysis and of your results is of great importance, because this is the best way to communicate to other stakeholders in the project as to the work you have done and the discoveries you have made, the patterns you have identified. All of them can be easily explained through pictures. So do spend time if you're not already familiar with Matplotlib. Do spend some time to learn about Matplotlib, because that is very important. With large amount of data, graphical representations, they are the best way to show trends. If you have 1,000 data points, 10,000 data points, 1,000,000 data points, it is not easy for you to show every individual data point, but a plot usually summarizes the trend of how the data looks like, or what kind of trends, patterns the data follows, and it is easily represented as a part of the picture. I can't overemphasize more than on this one. And graphics plays a huge role in various data science stages. It helps you identify outliers during the cleansing process. It's spotting good predictors when you do correlation analysis, and also finally explaining your results to the project owners. So graphical tools, you might have already been used to various of these graphical tools. Like, what is a histogram? A histogram is basically, if you have a list of values, it just shows how many values. You just split that range of values into buckets, and then it shows for each of the bucket how many data points fall into this bucket. So here for the first one, you see that the length of words, the length of a text in words. You have a collection of such text, and you're just bucketing them based on the length of the number of words found in this text, and this is a histogram you get. Pie charts, again, it gives you a distribution of data, basically for a given segment, how much percentage of the data falls into that segment. Pie charts you would have been used a lot in your life, and so are bar charts. Bar charts again tells you by segmentation how much. Pie charts and bar charts are kind of equivalent representations of one another. But the new chart that you might not have used to so far is what is called the box and whisker plot, which we would be using a lot in our own analysis. The box and whisker plot, we have already seen quartiles when you are doing the statistical lessons. We kind of looked at what a quartile is, and what are the four quartiles, how does the first quartile, median, third quartile, all of them are. So the box and whisker plot shows through a picture these various values. So suppose you take a list of values, a list of like an array, list or a list of values, and then try to compute the quartiles for that list, and then draw a box and whisker plot. This is how the box and whisker plot is going to look like. So you have the minimum value that in the quartiles. The minimum value is shown with the bottom line here, and then the first quartile is the bottom part of this box. The box represents the distance between the first and third quartiles. So the bottommost thing is the first quartile, the median is the strong line in the middle, and the third quartile is the top of the box. So the box represents the first and distance between the first and third quartiles. And the distance between the first and third quartile is called the intra-quartile range. And then the maximum value is again shown as a line at the top, and there is a dotted line connecting the box to these top lines. Now, one of the adaptations that the box and whisker plot does is, when it is trying to show the minimum and maximum values, what it does is that it tries to look at this box and tries to make sure that the minimum or maximum is within 1.5 times the intra-quartile range. So intra-quartile range is the distance between the top and the bottom, and the top and the bottom of these boxes, and it tries to make sure that this distance between the max and the line at the top is within 1.5 times the intra-quartile range. So if it is more than the intra-quartile range, it limits the max value to that intra-quartile range and shows everything else as dots, as outliers. So if the maximum value is within 1.5 times the intra-quartile range, the maximum value is shown as that value. If not, the 1.5 times the intra-quartile range is shown as the maximum value, and whatever values are there in the data set beyond the 1.5 times is shown as outliers, as these dots. The same applies to the bottom side as well as the top side. So this is how a box and whisker plot looks like. It shows you in a very pictorial way how exactly the data is distributed for a given data set. So you can immediately see whether there are outliers in the data. That helps you figure out outliers doing data cleansing. If the height of the box is small, it means the data is very closely knit. If the height of the box is large or the intra-quartile range is large, it means that the data is widely distributed. It immediately gives you a good picture of what kind of data you're looking at in this case.